Hey, as we know, life is full of surprises, both good and bad, and the day-to-day journey is full of unforeseen obstacles, and sometimes it's hard for us to see our way through. Beyond the normal mundane or where unscripted dreams live, join us for thought-provoking discussions and interviews to help us navigate through the fog and create our own path. We are the Unscripted Dream Podcast, operating outside the margins to motivate and inspire our audience. So, today's episode, people, is titled You Only Live Once, YOLO. And there's so much to say about you only live once, like good and bad. I would say the good part about it is you only live once. So, make sure that you do whatever you possibly can before that you check out of here. But on the same note, you know what I'm saying? Don't go too crazy with it because what if you don't check out anytime remotely to what you thought you were going to expire? And now you stuck with a list of problems that you can't get out of. So you gotta have a balance between going hard and going too hard, in my opinion. But let's move forward. So when we think about you only live once, man, we always think about like how people generalize YOLO and doing it big, like I just mentioned before. And that's really determined by short-term thinking and long-term thinking. So when you think about short-term thinking, you know what I'm saying, are you like a day-to-day thinker? And, I feel like with you being short-term thinker, there's not really too much longevity in that. And the reason why I say it's not much longevity in short-term thinking is because of, you're always thinking of like what's going to happen the day of. You never plan ahead or think about the future. Like you don't ever set up plays to award your future self. When you think of a short-term thinker, they're thinking about what can I get today versus playing the waiting game, or putting in the time and knowing that whatever you're learning or whatever you're trying to do is going to pay for. There's so many people I've met on so many levels that are very talented, and I know that they could definitely supersede or surpass where I'm at currently. And they had more potential than I did, honestly, but they just had that short level or that short term thinking to where that was their downfall. And that's the reason why they're where they are at this point in life. You know, I think that that's a lot of the reason why I may have survivor's remorse, so to speak. Not necessarily because of people passed away, but I mean, that happens too. But just more or less, just like, like, how did I make this situation and how did I get it through all of this? And I have to chop it up to the long term thinking, man. That's the reason why I have these issues with survivor remorse because I'm like, there's multiple people that should be here where I'm at, but they're not here because they didn't have that discipline. They had short term thinking. So everything was a day to day basis. Like, there's a circumstance where living your life to the fullest, you know, don't take it literal, and some people just can't really understand that concept of not living your life to the fullest, like taking that literal. Like someone like me, I'm living my life to the fullest, but I'm doing it with reason. Some people don't have that reasoning part. Sometimes that's not part of their upbringing that has been taught to them. So they go all out, think about, well, this is a Juvenile song. He made a song about it, but I ain't gonna go into that. But if you like Juvenile, you know what I'm talking about. But there's many songs that artists have made where, people got rich too quick or acting like you ain't never had nothing, is what I was going to originally say. And it shows, man, you fall into some fortune or you fall into, some good times for you and you just abuse it. You don't even think about maintaining it or anything like that, setting money aside, or you don't think about all the shortcomings that could possibly happen if you don't manage yourself right. And that's the reason why you see people blow up really fast and do great things. And then they fall to the wayside because they're not used to that power. They're not used to that role of responsibility. They're thinking on small terms. They're thinking day to day, like, shoot, you know what I'm saying? It's better to have it than never having it at all, rather than thinking like, well, shoot, I got it. How can I keep it? Or how can I get more?
So this is interesting in that there's like I would when I was little bit younger, I would hang out with people. I think we've all had friends that are just like they're short term people. Like we're like you're hanging out, like man, you're having a great time with these folks too. Like that's one of the things is that because they kind of live a particular way, it's like they're able to like have a good time and like do all these other things. But when you're someone who thinks like long term, or even not, I'm talking about like hanging out with somebody who doesn't even think about tomorrow. Like they're
Right.
just focused on having the best time they can have like today, right? So you hang out with these people, and then you have a good time that day. But then when you like, if these people are your friends, like I've had friends like this, when you hang out with them, and it's just like y'all like one on one, they got so many, like they have so many issues and things that kind of revolve around their decision making. So they're kind of someone who's fun in the short term, but in the long term, it starts to you kind of see like the baggage they start to accumulate by making all these short term decisions and not thinking things through. And these are friends that maybe or associates that end up going to jail, or like they they're just in like bad spots, or they like blow up and they just make these poor decisions because they're not thinking long term. And it's not because like everybody makes bad decisions. Like I make bad decisions. Joe makes bad decisions. If you're listening to this, you make bad decisions. But it's about you are consecutively making a series of bad decisions day after day instead of like spacing them out in between, because you're actually taking time to think out some of your decisions and some of your actions versus going into each day just like, man, I'm about to wake up, start drinking, taking shots, like doing all kinds of stuff, smoke, do whatever, you know, like go drive around without, like, it's like a combination of just a series of poor decisions that are a result of short term thinking. And eventually it catches up to people. And then sometimes, like Joe's kind of saying, it's kind of hard to recover from that. But and I guess the one thing I'll kind of add on that, just the short term piece, is that like it is possible to come out of that. I have in one of my investment groups, there's a guy pretty confident that he's a millionaire. And he said, well, that he was just saying, he shared that he said if he would have came into money any sooner, he'd have been dead. Because he was in a position when he was younger. He made a lot of poor decisions, but he understands. So this is something that's repairable, is what I'm trying to say as well. Is that, but he just shared that he, just kind of understand that like you can sometimes certain things don't come to you until there's a reason why it doesn't come, because you might blow it if it comes to you too soon. But just kind of transitioning on to the next topic is just I guess making up for wasted time, like and like really thinking about like how we utilize our time and making decisions based on that. I think in what the previous episode we were just talking about like John Morant basketball stuff, right? And I had no idea until Joe shared that information. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I was somebody who was heavy, like into basketball. I mean, that's my favorite sport. It's the one sport I could play by myself. Like a lot of these sports, you can't, like, be like, "Hey, I want to go play football and go, like, throw a lob up to yourself and catch it." Like, you can only do that for so long. At least basketball, you can like shoot around and do like, there's different things you can do. So that just, as a kid, like, that just became one of my favorite sports. And it was one of those things just as I got older, like, I would just follow all the news up until maybe like 2, 3 years ago. I stopped pretty much watching things entirely and thinking about like just thinking about like all the time I spent watching Sports Center, all the time I spent being worried about whatever the latest NBA players doing, and then their personal stuff too. Like, why am I worried about this incident that this athlete had at the club, or this thing that's falling apart with their sponsorships and all this other stuff, like the things and all that stuff. Like, I got my own stuff going on that I need to focus on. They getting paid, they getting attention. I'm not getting paid. I don't necessarily want attention, but it's like I spent all this time worried about trades, who's going here, there's like locker room beef, all this drama and all this stuff. You realize just how wasteful. Like I realized how many years I spent in my life just paying attention to sports, these stories, following these athletes, being worried about what they're doing, and all these like the stories. And just I realized I just kind of looked up and be like, man, I wasted like quite a bit of time in my life being focused on people who don't know who I am, who don't even like care about me at all. I put money in their pocket. They put zero in my like zero in mine. They're providing entertainment, which isn't time and a place for that. I did watch the All-Star weekend stuff. I watched that, but that's it. I didn't even watch the game. I just watched, the dunk contest, 3 point, and all that. I didn't watch anything else.
That's it.
So just saying, just trying to make a point, like trying to make a point of that. You think about the time that we spend like doing some of these things, spending time like following entertainers, following the news and like certain events and things like that. And you realize that like that's a huge, if you're someone who's like has ambition, has goals, it was a huge time that was lost. And I know I can't get that time back. So on the inverse, I just have to lock in and do like quite a bit of work on my end just to make up for all the time that was wasted. Cause who knows like who knows where you would be if you didn't spend, like if you had long, like if you would think long term and just think about like, hey, like while I was watching all this stuff in college or watching it when I, got out of college and was working, like what if I just spent 2 or 3 hours a week that I wasn't, that I was spending watching ESPN, watching basketball, doing all this stuff. What if I spent that like working on myself and just trying to figure out different ways to develop and different ways how to earn revenue and just become a better person overall? Like, where would I be if I made those decisions? So now I make those decisions to invest in myself, invest in my business versus investing time in sports, entertainment, athletes, people who don't care about me, and I think that's really what we can look at because we have control over those things. But I just kind of wanted to share that piece because it's possible to kind of look at your life, reflect on it, and just start carving stuff out that doesn't serve you, that's not useful, and kind of just move from there and just kind of grow in that capacity. But Joe, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, man. So, when you started off or opened up about, making up for time wasted, I'm I'm kind of torn. I'm kind of on the fence, because I feel like no time is ever wasted. I'm kind of on the fence with that, but I'm also understanding or knowing that there's certain expiration dates on things that you can do. Like if your dream is to be an athlete, you only have so many years to really do it in certain sports. Some longer than others, like golf, right? But you can golf all the way up to 60 plus, right? And still do
Yeah,
pretty decent for yourself. But what I'm trying to say is there's a there's no such thing as time wasted to me, but there's definitely expiration dates where you can hit your mark. And it all depends on that. So hopefully you can find or position yourself into exactly what you want to do. The sooner the better. And I think that's the reason why society tries to uplift our like kids that graduate high school and they try to like get them to transition or figure out exactly what they want to do. Okay, you're 18, so now what do you want to do? Let's force you to school so you can. And it's all a hustle, it's all a game because 9 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure a lot of people do not know what they wanna do, even if they have, like, a focused major or whatever. They just kinda, like, just take it and stick with it. That's kinda what happened to me. I can speak from my experience, and I ended up transitioning to where I really wanted to be, but we're not gonna go down that road completely, but what I'm trying to say is like sometimes even when you're younger, you haven't been trained or you haven't been properly conditioned to think long term in certain aspects. You develop it over time. That's what happened to me. Like I was a habitual offender of short-term thinking. Like, I didn't think about, like, my future occupations and all that kinda stuff growing up just because it wasn't a priority. It wasn't on my list. No one ever had a conversation with me and be like, "Hey, this is gonna be your life. This is gonna be your atmosphere. This is gonna be your world in the next year or 2. So, you need to get with it. You need to start figuring that stuff out." And I also understand the process of you don't wanna pressure a kid to doing all that because, you don't want a kid to break down or lose themselves and all that kind of stuff. But I'm here to tell you, it doesn't matter. You're gonna break down. You're going to lose yourself. That's part of the process, unfortunately, with identity. For you to establish yourself and become, you know, someone great or someone that's respectable, there's a lot of mental breakdowns that happen in that process. You may not see that on the public end, but best believe those people behind the walls have went through it, been going through it, and still going through it. It's like what I used to look at stuff on YouTube as far as like speeches, and I remember I believe it was something like Kobe said or something, where it was just like, either you coming out of a storm or you're in the middle of a storm or you just like transitioning. So it's just like there's always gonna be some type of level of controversy, whether you like it or not. Like that's the whole point of being great. Like if you want to be great or you want to be revered as one of the greatest, man, you're gonna have to take on every challenge to the point where you're gonna get addicted to it. So it's like, okay, what's my next challenge? Okay, this ain't enough for me, so let me do something else. I don't want my brain to rot away. I don't want to get bored. Like, what's the next challenge for me to accomplish? And I hope you do develop that mindset because that's all you have to look forward to in your life, unfortunately, is competition. Not necessarily competition with others, but that's definitely a factor. But competition with yourself, like how can I reinvent myself? How can I stay on top of things? And, I guess it really just depends on what type of person you are, but eventually you're going to get to the point where you're like, okay, I need to start thinking about my future as far as like how I'm going to lay up or how am I going to set myself up? Whether that means you want a family, whether that means you want your standard of living wants to be different. Not everybody wants to live paycheck to paycheck. And, that's usually not everyone's aspiration to live paycheck to paycheck and just be, trying to figure out every few years where to live next as far as like an apartment complex and not really having like your own, like, not having like something that's actually like secure, some sense of security. Like, that's not really a good way of living. I'm not saying people haven't done that. I know a lot of people that have, but I guarantee you, those people that I have experience with, whether that's family, friends, or whatever, they're usually not as happy, just because they've made some choices or they just didn't have the opportunities like I had to really like think about what they want to do next. Maybe it's their fault. Maybe it's just a matter of circumstance. I can't determine that. I'm not the creator. So I'm just saying, like, as far as, wasting time and time being wasted, is all what you do within those minutes of the day that you have every single day. So if you're gonna sit on the couch every day and eat potato chips, what you think gonna happen? You're gonna be out of shape, not gonna look like these people you see on your TV screen. You might, you might be blessed with some genes, but that's highly unlikely. But it's literally like you're a creature of habit, like we're all creatures of habit. So if you got yourself a routine and everything as far as like being productive and working out or doing whatever you do, man, that's what's really going to determine your future and set you up for success. You just got to figure out a good layout for you as far as getting to it and getting the things that you want.
So just some takeaways, or what my main takeaway is that I was listening to, Earn Your Leisure, started listening to Market Mondays, like I said before, my favorite show. And I was listening to Rashad, who's one of the hosts, and he was saying this week, and he was just talking about how like just how it's important to have like a long term vision. It really resonated with me. And he was pretty much said that you have to be willing to do unreasonable things for like a relatively short period of time.
Yeah.
And then he also added that like you'll never be great doing ordinary things.
Nope.
And like that was one of the things where it's like, well, relatively short. And I think he added to was like three to like 5 years is a relatively short period of time. Like in the long term, when you think about it long term and understand that like not everything is going to come to you in a couple months, in a week, in a year. Like some things are going to take years to build, decades to build. But it's about if you have the ability to think long term and forgo immediate gratification and understand that the person you might see next to you that's doing well, like that might be like year 10 of their path, their journey that they're on. That might be year 10 and you see them at their peak. But if you looked at them in year one, year two, they look pretty sad, right? Because they were trying to build themselves up. So sometimes the image of things that we see today of people it's not like they had to get to those pinnacles that they're at, but they had to actually do the work. Most people you don't see, like you see, like even just, and this is it, I'll be done, but like you see an actor in a movie, right? And you see them at the premieres, the studios, and all those things, but you don't see that they went to 100 auditions. They got turned down for X amount of roles. They had to sit and wait, not have an agent, all these other things that these people, like they work in these competitive industries. You just see them in the end game. You see them in the end game, but you don't see all the rejections, the training that goes into it, the people that perform in and they're entertainers at a high level. You just like people don't understand that and they want to be these people, but you don't understand what it takes to be a performer at that level and to like really produce at a high level like that. So those people are extremely talented and they deal with a lot of rejection too. So like just keeping that in mind is that you might be in day one. This might be day one. You decide I want to start pursuing something and it's going to take the long term. And then you see somebody who's 5 years ahead. Like you in 5 years, if you can be like going back to what I was saying, like if you can be unreasonable, understand that if you're trying to be like everybody else, do what everybody else does. But if you're trying to do something different and you want a life that doesn't look like most people's lives, you're going to have to make some sacrifice, and you're going to have to understand it's going to be some failure there. You're going to take some losses. You're going to have some, it's going to be peaks and valleys, but in the long run, maybe that outcome that you're looking for, if you don't quit and you adapt, you adapt to the changes, you might actually find the outcome that you're looking for might actually be greater than what you anticipated. So just continue to work, but understand, just, I think we're just trying to let you know the benefits of thinking short term and just having that long term vision. That's what we're trying to get across today. But I'll close on that.
Yeah, I don't have much else to follow up from that, man. I think you said it well. So, with that being said, man, I appreciate you guys for listening and tuning in, and on to the next one. Take care. Be safe.
Yep, so